I stood in the doorway of that old Montana house, my hands shaking as I held the rusty key. The wooden floors creaked under my feet as I stepped inside. Dust particles danced in the sunlight streaming through dirty windows. But when I walked into what used to be the living room, I couldn't believe my eyes. There's Zoe. Covering every single wall from floor to ceiling were hundreds of photographs of me. Not just any photographs, pictures of me as a little girl, pictures of me on my wedding day, pictures of me holding my babies. And in the center of the room sat a beautiful wooden chest with my name carved into it. Inside that chest was something that would change everything. I thought I knew about my late husband and why he really left me this house. Comment below, as I'd love to hear your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel to help us hit that big 5,000 subscriber milestone. We're so close, and every single one counts. It's free for you, but it means everything to this channel. And hey, while you're at it, I've left a video and also a link to a playlist on the final screen that I promise will surprise you. Seriously, don't miss them. Thanks so much for watching all the way through. Now go hit that button and be part of the journey. My name is Delilah Washington, and 3 months ago, my world fell apart in ways I never saw coming. Let me start from the beginning, because this story is going to take you on a ride you won't forget. It was a cold Tuesday morning in March when the lawyer called. My husband Theodore had been gone for 2 weeks after his heart attack, and I was still trying to figure out how to live without him. We had been married for 32 years, and Theo was my everything. We weren't rich people, but we had a small house in Denver and enough savings to get by. Our daughter Natasha lived in a beautiful home in downtown Denver with her husband Marcus. They were both lawyers and made good money. When Mr. Peterson, our family lawyer, asked me to come to his office for the reading of Theodore's will, I thought it would be simple. I figured Theo would leave everything to me, maybe set aside some money for Natasha. Boy, was I wrong. I sat in that cold leather chair in Mr. Peterson's office, with Natasha and Marcus sitting across from me. Marcus kept checking his expensive watch and sighing like he had somewhere better to be. Natasha held my hand and gave me a sad smile. "Now, Delilah," Mr. Peterson said, adjusting his glasses. Theodore made some very specific requests in his will. He wanted me to read this exactly as he wrote it. He cleared his throat and began reading. "To my beloved daughter Natasha, I leave our family home in Denver, along with all the furniture and my savings account, which currently holds $47,000. Natasha gasped and started crying happy tears. "Oh my goodness, Daddy, I can't believe it." Marcus squeezed her shoulder and smiled. I was confused but happy for my daughter. Theo always loved that house. "And to my dear wife Delilah," Mr. Peterson continued, "I leave the property I purchased in Whitefish, Montana, along with the house that sits on it." I blinked hard. "I'm sorry. What? What house in Montana?" Mr. Peterson looked at me with sympathy in his eyes. "Apparently, your husband bought a property in Montana 5 years ago. He never told you about it?" My heart started beating fast. Theo and I told each other everything. How could he buy a house and never mention it? "No, he never said anything. What kind of house?" Mr. Peterson shuffled through his papers. "Well, according to the property records, It's a small house built in 1962. The property inspection from 5 years ago shows it needs quite a bit of work. The roof has some damage, and the plumbing might need updating. Natasha and Marcus looked at each other. Marcus rolled his eyes and said, "So Mom gets the broke-down house in the middle of nowhere, and we get the nice house in the city? That doesn't seem fair." "Marcus," Natasha scolded him, but I could tell she was thinking the same thing. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. Why would Theo give Natasha our beautiful family home and leave me with some run-down house in Montana that I didn't even know existed? Mr. Peterson handed me a set of keys and an envelope. "Theodore left this for you, Delilah. He said to give it to you after I read the will." My hands were shaking as I opened the envelope. Inside was a piece of paper with Theo's handwriting. It said, "My darling Delilah, I know you must be confused and hurt right now. Please trust me one more time. Go to Montana. Go to the house. Everything will make sense when you get there. I love you more than all the stars in the sky. Your devoted husband, Theodore." I started crying right there in the lawyer's office. Nothing made sense. Why would the man who loved me for 32 years give away our home and stick me with some broken house in Montana? After we left the lawyer's office, Natasha invited me to come stay with her and Marcus until I figured out what to do next. I was grateful because I didn't want to be alone in that big house that was no longer mine. But living with Marcus was harder than I expected. He made it clear from day one that he didn't want me there. He would make mean comments about how I should just sell the Montana house and find a cheap apartment somewhere. "Mom Washington," he would say in his snotty voice, "you can't just live here forever. Natasha and I need our space. We're young professionals with careers to think about." Natasha would tell him to be nice, but she never really stood up for me. I could tell she was torn between helping her mother and keeping her husband happy. Things got really bad about 2 weeks after I moved in. I was in the kitchen making breakfast for everyone, trying to be helpful, when Marcus walked in wearing his fancy suit. "Delilah, we need to talk," he said, not even saying good morning. "What's wrong, Marcus? This isn't working out. You've been here 2 weeks, and you're not making any effort to figure out your own life. You just sit around feeling sorry for yourself." I felt my face get hot with embarrassment. I'm still grieving my husband, Marcus. I'm trying to figure out what to do next. "Well, then, figure it out somewhere else," he snapped. "I didn't sign up to take care of my mother-in-law. You have that house in Montana. Go there." Just then, Natasha walked into the kitchen. "What's going on? Why are you two arguing?" Marcus put his arm around Natasha. "I was just explaining to your mother that it's time for her to move on. She can't live here forever." Natasha looked uncomfortable. "Marcus, maybe you could be a little more gentle about it." "Gentle?" Marcus laughed in a mean way. "Delilah, no offense, but you're acting weak. Your husband is dead. Deal with it. Sell that Montana house, get an apartment, and move on with your life. Stop depending on other people to take care of you." Those words hit me like a slap in the face. Weak? I had worked 2 jobs to help Theo pay for Natasha's college. I had taken care of Theo through his diabetes and high blood pressure for years. I had never been weak a day in my life. "You know what, Marcus?" I said, standing up straighter. "You're right. I don't need to stay here and listen to you be cruel to me in my time of grief? I went upstairs and packed my suitcase. Natasha followed me, crying, "Mom, please don't leave like this. Marcus didn't mean to be so harsh." "Yes, he did, baby," I said, folding my clothes. "And maybe he's right. Maybe I do need to stop depending on other people." "But where will you go?" I looked at the Montana house keys sitting on the dresser. "I guess I'm going to Montana." That night, I loaded up my old Honda with everything I owned and started driving west. I had no idea what I would find in Montana, but I knew I couldn't stay in Denver with Marcus treating me like garbage. The drive took me 2 days. I stopped at cheap motels and ate fast food. As I drove through the mountains and vast open spaces, I kept thinking about Theo's note. Why did he want me to go to this house so badly? What was waiting for me there? When I finally pulled up to the address Mr. Peterson had given me, my heart sank. The house was worse than I had imagined. It was a small, one-story house with peeling white paint and a sagging front porch. The yard was overgrown with weeds, and there were broken shutters hanging off the windows. It looked like nobody had lived there in years. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, just staring at this house that was supposed to be my new home. I started crying again, thinking about Marcus calling me weak. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was just a foolish old woman who couldn't take care of herself. But then I remembered Theo's letter. He had asked me to trust him one more time. After 32 years of marriage, I owed him that much. I got out of the car, grabbed the keys, and walked up to the front door. The key stuck in the lock, but after some wiggling, it finally turned. The door creaked open, and I stepped inside. The house smelled musty and old. There were dust covers over all the furniture, and the windows were so dirty that barely any light came through. But as I walked from room to room, I started to notice things that made my heart beat faster. In the kitchen, there was a blue ceramic cookie jar that looked exactly like one I had admired at a craft fair years ago. In the bedroom, there was a quilt on the bed that had the same pattern as one my grandmother used to make. These couldn't be coincidences, but it was when I walked into the living room that I discovered something that made me drop my purse right on the floor. Every single wall in that living room was covered with photographs of me. Not just a few pictures, hundreds of them. Pictures of me as a baby that I had never seen before. Pictures of me at my high school graduation. Pictures of me and Theo on our wedding day that I thought had been lost in a fire years ago. Pictures of me holding Natasha when she was born. Pictures of me at birthday parties, Christmas mornings, and family gatherings going back decades. I walked around the room in a daze, my mouth hanging open. How did Theo get all these pictures? Some of them I remembered taking, but others looked like they had been taken by someone else, someone who was watching me from far away. There were pictures of me working in my garden, pictures of me walking to the mailbox, pictures of me laughing with friends at church. In the center of the room sat a beautiful wooden chest that looked handmade. Carved into the top in fancy letters was my name, Delilah Marie Washington. My hands were shaking as I knelt down and opened it. Inside the chest were letters, hundreds of letters tied with red ribbons. I picked up the first bundle and saw they were addressed to me, but I had never received them. The return address said, Theodore Washington, but the postmark was from Whitefish, Montana, and they went back 5 years. I untied the ribbon with trembling fingers and opened the first letter. It was dated exactly 5 years ago, just a few days after Theo's first heart attack. "My dearest Delilah," it began, "the doctor told me today that my heart is worse than we thought. I might not have as much time left as we hoped. I'm writing this letter from a place I bought for you, a place where I've been preparing something special. I know you're going to be confused when you find out about this house, but please don't be angry with me. Everything I've done has been for you." I sat down hard on the dusty floor and kept reading. I know I should have told you about buying this house, but I wanted it to be a surprise. Not the kind of surprise you give someone on their birthday, but the kind of surprise that shows them how much they mean to you. I've been coming here every month for the past 5 years, fixing it up and making it perfect for you. This house is going to be your fresh start, your new beginning after I'm gone. Tears were streaming down my face as I opened letter after letter. In each one, Theo wrote about the work he was doing on the house. He wrote about installing new plumbing, fixing the roof, and painting every room. He wrote about planting a garden in the backyard, because he knew how much I loved flowers. He wrote about meeting the neighbors and telling them all about his wonderful wife, who would be coming to live there someday. But the most shocking thing was what he wrote about Marcus. "Delilah, I need to tell you something about Marcus that's going to hurt, but you need to know the truth. Last month, when I was at Natasha and Marcus's house for dinner, I overheard Marcus on the phone with someone. He was talking about our will and how he and Natasha were going to inherit everything when I died. He said, and I quote, 'Once the old man kicks the bucket, we'll sell that house, and his wife can figure out her own life. I'm not taking care of some broke old lady.' My heart felt like it was breaking all over again. I thought about how Marcus had treated me, and now I knew he had been planning it all along. Theo's letter continued. "I know this is going to sound crazy, but I changed our will the very next day. I decided to give Natasha the Denver house because she's our daughter and she deserves something from us. But I couldn't let Marcus get his hands on the money I've been saving for you. Instead, I've been using that money to buy and fix up this house. By the time you read this letter, every penny of our savings will be invested in making this place perfect for you." I opened more letters and learned about all the things Theo had done to the house. He had put in a brand new kitchen with modern appliances. He had refinished all the hardwood floors. He had installed a new heating system and air conditioning. He had even built a workshop in the garage because he remembered how I had always wanted to try woodworking. But there was more, much more. In one letter, Theo wrote, "Delilah, I met the most interesting man today. His name is Franklin Pierce, and he owns the biggest ranch in this area. He's a widower, like you're going to be someday, and he seems like a really good person. He's been helping me with some of the heavier work on the house, and he keeps asking about you. I told him about your beautiful smile and your kind heart, and I think he'd like to meet you when you come here." I had to put the letter down for a minute. Theo was trying to set me up with someone? Even from beyond the grave, my husband was looking out for me. I kept reading and found out that Theo had done even more than just fix up the house. He had opened a bank account at the local bank and put $50,000 in it. $50,000. That was more money than we had ever had in our savings account back in Denver. I know you're probably wondering where this money came from, Theo wrote. Remember my old friend Raymond who moved to Texas 10 years ago? Well, he started an oil business and made it big. Last year, he paid me back that $5,000 I loaned him when we were young men, plus interest, a lot of interest. He gave me $60,000, Delilah. I used $10,000 to buy and fix up this house, and I put $50,000 in an account for you. I was crying so hard I could barely see the letters. All this time, I thought Theo had abandoned me and given everything to Natasha and Marcus. But the truth was that he had spent years preparing a whole new life for me. I found letters where Theo wrote about the neighbors he had met. There was Mrs. Betty Johnson, who lived next door and made the best apple pie in Montana. There was young Tommy Rodriguez, who lived across the street and had offered to help me with yard work whenever I needed it. There was Dr. Sarah Kim, who lived 2 houses down and had told Theo she was always available if I needed medical advice. But the letter that made me cry the hardest was the last one in the bundle. My darling Delilah, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and you've made it to our house in Montana. I'm so sorry I couldn't tell you about this place while I was alive, but I wanted you to discover it when you needed it most. I knew that after I died, you would feel lost and alone. I knew that Marcus would probably be cruel to you, because that's the kind of person he is. I wanted to make sure you had somewhere to go where you could start over and be happy again. This house isn't just a house, Delilah. It's a love letter. Every nail I hammered, every wall I painted, every flower I planted in the garden was me telling you how much I love you. You are the strongest, kindest, most beautiful woman I have ever known, and you deserve to spend the rest of your life surrounded by people who appreciate you. There's one more thing in the chest that I want you to find. Look at the very bottom, underneath all the letters. Trust me one more time. I moved all the letters aside and felt around the bottom of the chest. My fingers found a small wooden box. Inside the box was a key and a note that said, "Go to the kitchen, look behind the refrigerator." I walked to the kitchen, still crying and shaking. The refrigerator was one of those big modern ones that looked expensive. I managed to pull it away from the wall, and behind it was a small door I hadn't noticed before. The key fit perfectly. I opened the door and found a small room I didn't know existed. Inside that room was something that made me gasp out loud. The entire room was set up like an office, with a desk, a computer, and filing cabinets. But what caught my attention was the wall covered with business documents and certificates. At the top, in big letters, was a certificate that said, "Delilah's Dream Bakery, licensed business, State of Montana." I had always dreamed of opening my own bakery, but Theo and I never had enough money to start a business. I used to bake for church events and neighbors, and people were always telling me I should sell my cakes and cookies, but it always seemed like an impossible dream. I opened the filing cabinet and found business licenses, insurance papers, and contracts with local suppliers. There was even a lease agreement for a small storefront in downtown Whitefish. Everything was paid for a full year in advance. On the desk was another letter from Theo. Surprise, my love. I know you think I never listened when you talked about wanting to open a bakery, but I heard every word. I've been planning this for 3 years. The storefront is ready for you whenever you're ready to start. Mrs. Johnson next door used to own a restaurant, and she's agreed to help you get started. All the equipment has been ordered and is waiting for you at the store. I sat down in the chair and cried until I had no tears left. Theo hadn't just left me a house. He had left me a completely new life, planned out to the smallest detail. He had thought of everything. But I still didn't understand why all those photographs were on the living room walls, or how he had gotten pictures of me that I had never seen before. I walked back to the living room and looked more carefully at the photos. That's when I noticed something strange. Mixed in with all the pictures of me were pictures of other people I didn't recognize. There was a picture of a young woman who looked a lot like me, standing next to a man in a military uniform. There was a picture of an elderly woman in a rocking chair who had my same smile. I found another envelope taped to the back of one of the picture frames. Inside was a letter that would explain everything, but it would also reveal the biggest shock of all. Delilah, the letter began, there's something I never told you about your family, something your mother made me promise never to tell you, but something you have a right to know now that she's gone. My mother had died when I was 25, and she had always told me that my father died when I was a baby. She said we had no other family. Your father didn't die when you were young, Delilah. He moved to Montana. Your mother was angry with him and told him never to contact you again. She made him promise to stay away from you forever. But he never stopped loving you. He never stopped watching over you from far away. I felt dizzy and had to sit down on the floor. The man in the military uniform in those pictures is your father, Daniel Morrison. The elderly woman is your grandmother, Ruth Morrison. They both lived here in Whitefish their whole lives, waiting and hoping that someday they would get to meet you. The letter continued. Your father died 2 years ago, Delilah, but he left specific instructions for me. He had been keeping the track of you your whole life through a private investigator. That's how he got all those pictures of you. He wanted to make sure you were safe and happy, even though he couldn't be part of your life. When your father died, he left you something that's going to change everything. I was shaking so hard I could barely hold the letter. I had family in Montana. My father had been alive all these years. Go to the Whitefish Community Bank tomorrow morning, Delilah. Ask for Mrs. Patricia Williams and tell her you're Daniel Morrison's daughter. She's been waiting to meet you for 2 years. I spent that first night in the house lying awake on the bed, staring at the ceiling and trying to process everything I had learned. My husband had secretly prepared a whole new life for me. My father, who I thought was dead, had actually been alive and watching over me from Montana. And tomorrow I was going to find out what my father had left me. The next morning, I drove to the bank with nervous butterflies in my stomach. Mrs. Williams was a friendly woman in her 60s who hugged me the moment I introduced myself. "Oh, honey," she said with tears in her eyes, "your daddy talked about you every single day for 20 years. He was so proud of you and so sorry he couldn't be part of your life. She led me to a private office and pulled out a thick file. Your father owned quite a bit of land here in Whitefish, Delilah. When he died, he left all of it to you. We've been paying the property taxes and maintaining everything, waiting for you to come claim it. She handed me a map, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The map showed that my father owned over 300 acres of land in Montana, including lakefront property worth millions of dollars. But that wasn't even the biggest shock waiting for me. Your father also owned several businesses in town, Mrs. Williams explained, spreading out more papers on her desk. There's a successful restaurant, a small hotel, and a gift shop that brings in tourists from all over the state. He left everything to you, along with a trust fund that has been growing for 20 years. My hands were shaking as she showed me bank statements. The trust fund had over $2 million in it. $2 million. I had gone from thinking I was broke and homeless to discovering I was rich. But there's something else, dear, Mrs. Williams said softly. Your father wrote you a letter before he died. I've been keeping it in our safe, waiting for this day. She handed me a thick envelope with my name written on it in handwriting I didn't recognize, but somehow felt familiar. I opened it with trembling fingers. My dearest daughter Delilah. And naman sosomel sa tema misvisanya. I know you must be shocked and confused right now. I know you probably have a lot of anger toward me for not being part of your life. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I hope you'll let me explain. I had to stop reading for a moment because I was crying too hard to see the words. Your mother and I loved each other very much when we were young, but we had different ideas about what kind of life we wanted. She wanted to live in the city and be around lots of people. I wanted to live in the mountains and have a quiet, simple life. When you were born, we tried to make it work, but we kept fighting about everything. The final fight was about you, Delilah. I wanted to take you camping and fishing and teach you to love the outdoors like I did. Your mother said the mountains were too dangerous for a little girl. She said I was selfish for wanting to raise you away from good schools and opportunities. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was selfish. One night, when you were 3 years old, we had the worst fight we ever had. Your mother told me that if I really loved you, I would let you go and give you a chance at a better life. She said that if I stayed, you would never get to see the world or go to college or become anything important. She made me choose between my love for you and what was best for your future. I was sobbing as I read this. My poor father had to choose between being with me and giving me opportunities he couldn't provide. I chose your future, Delilah. It was the hardest thing I ever did in my life. I moved to Montana and started over, but I never stopped loving you. I never stopped hoping that someday, when you were grown up and didn't need me to make sacrifices for you anymore, we could be together again. The letter went on to explain how my father had hired a private investigator to keep track of me throughout my life. He knew when I graduated from high school. He knew when I got married. He knew when Natasha was born. He had been watching me from far away, making sure I was safe and happy. When I found out you married Theodore, I was so happy. I could tell from the pictures the investigator sent me that he was a good man who loved you the way you deserved to be loved. I never contacted you because I didn't want to complicate your life. but I kept hoping that someday, after your mother passed away, I might get the chance to meet you. Then I got sick, and I realized I was running out of time. I contacted Theodore and told him everything. He was angry with me at first for staying away from you for so long, but when I explained why I had done it, he understood. He agreed to help me set up a way for us to finally meet. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Theo had known about my father. They had been working together. Theodore and I became friends over the past few years, Delilah. He would come visit me here in Montana, and we would talk about you for hours. He told me about your dreams of opening a bakery. And I told him about all the land and businesses I wanted to leave you. Together, we came up with a plan. The plan was for Theodore to buy the house next to mine and fix it up for you. When the time came, you would inherit that house and discover the truth about your family. I would finally get to meet my daughter, and you would inherit everything I had spent my life building. But then I got sicker faster than we expected, and I died before you came to Montana. I'm so sorry, my darling girl. I wanted so badly to hold you and tell you how proud I am of the woman you became. By this point, I was crying so hard that Mrs. John Williams handed me a whole box of tissues. "There's more, honey," she said gently. "Your father left video messages for you too. Would you like to see them?" She led me to a small room in the back of the bank where there was a television and a DVD player. She handed me a disc labeled, "For my daughter Delilah." When I put the disc in and pressed play, I saw a man who looked so much like me, it took my breath away. He had my eyes, my nose, and my smile. He was sitting in a chair that I now recognized as being in the living room of my house. "Hello, my beautiful daughter," he said, and his voice was warm and kind. "If you're watching this, then Theodore's plan worked, and you made it to Montana. I'm so sorry I'm not there to greet you in person, but I hope that everything Theodore and I prepared for you shows you how much you are loved." He went on to tell me about each of the businesses he was leaving me, and about all the employees who had been like family to him. He told me about the neighbors who were excited to meet me. He told me about all the places in Montana he had wanted to show me. But most importantly, Delilah, I want you to know that leaving you was not abandonment. It was the greatest act of love I could give you. Look at the life you built. Look at the wonderful daughter you raised. Look at the successful marriage you had. You became everything I dreamed you could become, and I got to watch it all happen, even if it was from far away. Now it's time for the second half of your life, my dear. Use the money and the businesses to build whatever kind of life makes you happy. Start that bakery you always dreamed of. Travel the world. Fall in love again if you want to. Do everything that makes your heart sing, and know that your old dad is watching over you and cheering you on. When the video ended, I sat in that little room and cried for my father, for Theo, and for all the years we had lost. But I also cried tears of joy because I realized that even though both men were gone, they had given me the most incredible gift, a brand new life full of possibilities. Mrs. Williams spent the rest of the day showing me around town and introducing me to all the people who worked at my father's businesses. Everyone had been waiting to meet me, and they all had stories about my father and how excited he was about the day I would finally come to Montana. The restaurant manager, a kind woman named Gloria Martinez, told me that my father had trained all the staff to make my favorite foods based on descriptions Theo had given him. The hotel manager, a young man named Jackson Lee, showed me the suite my father had prepared for me, complete with family photos and my favorite books. But the most touching moment came when I visited the gift shop. The manager there was an elderly Native American man named Robert Crowfeather, who had been my father's best friend for 30 years. "Your father talked about you every single day," Robert told me with tears in his eyes. "He was so proud of you and so sorry that he couldn't be part of your life. But he never gave up hope that someday he would get to hold his little girl again." Robert handed me a small wooden box. "He made this for you with his own hands. He worked on it a little bit every day for the past 5 years. Inside the box was the most beautiful necklace I had ever seen. It had a pendant shaped like a heart, and inside the heart was a tiny picture of me as a baby with my father and my mother back when we were a family. He wanted you to know that even though he had to let you go, you were always in his heart," Robert said. That night, I called Natasha from my new house. I told her everything that had happened. About the letters from Theo, about discovering my father had been alive, about inheriting the businesses and the money. "Mom, I can't believe all of this," she said, crying. "I had no idea Dad had been planning all of this. And I'm so sorry about how Marcus treated you. I should have stood up for you more." "It's okay, baby," I said. "Everything worked out the way it was supposed to." "Are you going to stay in Montana?" I looked around the living room with all the pictures of me and my family, and I thought about all the people in town who were excited to know me, and I thought about the bakery I could finally open. "Yes, Boo, I think I am." A month later, I opened Delilah's Dream Bakery in the storefront Theo had rented for me. Mrs. Johnson, my neighbor, helped me perfect all my recipes, and soon I had customers coming from 3 towns over to try my cakes and cookies. Franklin Pierce, the rancher Theo had told me about, did eventually come by the bakery. He was a kind, gentle man who made me laugh and brought me wildflowers from his property. We started going on long walks together and talking about our late spouses. I wasn't ready for romance yet, but I enjoyed having a friend who understood loss. The biggest surprise came 6 months later, when Marcus showed up at my bakery unannounced. He looked embarrassed and ashamed as he stood in my doorway. "Mrs. Washington," he said quietly, "I came to apologize. Natasha told me about everything that happened, about what your husband had planned for you, about your father. I realize now that I was cruel to you when you needed support the most." I looked at this man who had called me weak and thrown me out of his house, and I felt something I didn't expect to feel: pity. Marcus had been so focused on money and what he could get from other people that he had missed out on the chance to be kind to someone who was grieving. "Marcus," I said, "I forgive you, but more importantly, you need to learn that true strength comes from lifting other people up, not tearing them down." He nodded and wiped his eyes. "I know that now. I'm trying to be better." As I watched him leave, I thought about all the lessons I had learned over the past year. I had learned that sometimes the people who love us most have to make hard choices that we don't understand at the time. I had learned that strength isn't about never needing help. It's about getting back up when life knocks you down. Most importantly, I had learned that it's never too late to start over and build a new life. 1 year after I first walked into that dusty house in Montana, I was standing in my thriving bakery, surrounded by friends and neighbors who had become like family to me. Natasha had come to visit for the weekend, and she was helping me serve customers and laughing at my stories about small-town life. "Mom," she said as we were closing up for the day, "I've never seen you this happy. Dad would be so proud of what you've built here." I thought about Theo and my father and how they had worked together to give me this new life. I thought about how love sometimes means letting go, and how the people we love never really leave us if we carry their lessons in our hearts. "You know what, baby?" I said, hanging up my apron and looking around my beautiful bakery. I think they both knew exactly what they were doing. That night, I sat on my front porch and looked up at the stars over Montana. I thought about the scared, heartbroken woman who had driven here a year ago, thinking she had nothing left. Now I had a successful business, a beautiful home, wonderful friends, and the knowledge that I had been loved more deeply than I ever imagined possible. Life had taken everything I thought I wanted and given me everything I actually needed. Sometimes the best gifts come wrapped in packages we don't recognize at first. Sometimes what looks like an ending is actually a beginning. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, the people who love us find a way to take care of us even after they're gone. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.